Hi, I'm Thomasine Oliphant with the Ulster County Department of Mental Health. Thanks for joining us to learn about mental health and how we can take care of ourselves and others. In this video, Tara Sanders from YWCA Ulster and Girls Inc. will lead us in a brief grounding practice. Then we'll hear from Hamali Pandya at Astor Services for Children and Families, who will be talking to Annabelle, a young person who uses her own experiences to help others.
Welcome. My name is Tara Sanders, and I'm the Director of Community Outreach and Public Relations for YWCA Ulster County. Additionally, I'm a trauma-informed yoga and mindfulness teacher. Before we proceed with today's video, I invite us to open our session with a short grounding practice to support you and welcome you into the present moment. Whatever you are sitting on, I invite you to shift and move as needed to arrive and land in your seat. If it feels supportive, you're welcome to close your eyes or can choose to keep your eyes open with a soft gaze. Notice the points of contact with your seat and what's touching the ground. May this be a resource for you today and in your daily life. The practice of welcoming yourself, arriving, landing, and noticing the ground that meets you in the present moment. As you're ready, I welcome you to connect with your breath. Meet yourself in the present moment, just where you are today. With curiosity and kindness, notice your breath, your welcoming breath. If it's available to you, I invite you to lengthen your exhale. Notice your inhalation. Perhaps notice the pause between the inhale and the exhale, and practice lengthening your exhalation. I invite you to practice this on your own for a few rounds, noticing where your body is grounded. As you notice where your body and breath are connected and grounded in the present moment, may this serve as a supportive resource for you as we move forward with the rest of today's presentation. Thank you.
So Annabelle, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a Marist student. I'm a senior. I graduate in May, but I'm also from the Boston area. But I study criminal justice and psychology at Marist. I play on the club lacrosse team, which is super fun. I'm the president of a mental health club called Active Minds on campus. And I do a lot of photography. So I work with athletics and I work a lot with them.
Wow, it sounds like you're really thriving. Was that always the case?
Not necessarily. As a kid, I was super anxious, and I think my parents always saw that. I remember in kindergarten, my teacher had, I think she used it as a strategy to get us to not focus on her when she was trying to set up other activities. She had this big rocking chair, this big comfy seat that she would say one student would sit in, and then you had to kind of be respectful, watch them. As she would be setting up something else. And if you were, paying attention to the student, making eye contact, then the student would pick someone who was being respectful to go sit next. It was kind of this strategy that she used. And I remember I never wanted to be the one to sit in the chair. I would always watch the teacher on purpose. And I remember one time being picked and being so surprised because I never wanted to be the one picked. And I also remember when I was a kid, I used to wear a lot of bright colors. And I remember having this t-shirt with Dora on it that I used to love. And a girl in my class actually teased me for wearing it. And I was kind of so afraid of drawing more attention to myself and so concerned with what other people thought of me that I just stopped wearing it and the bright colors, as my mom kind of remembers. And this kind of anxiety ended up affecting a lot of areas of my life. when I was going to sleep, I used to not be able to go to sleep unless I could hear my parents downstairs. If I couldn't hear them, I used to kind of think that they weren't there and something bad had happened.
Mm.
And when I was in elementary school, I kind of realized that, friendships with girls were more about talking and all of that, and I was more activity based. So my two best friends were boys in my class. And around the same time in kindergarten, I began to experience kind of some symptoms of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. When I walked, each of my feet had to hit the floor the same number of times, and I had to chew the same number of times on both sides of my mouth.
Wow. And did you tell your parents or anyone to get help with some of these struggles? Were they able to help or find someone to get you help?
Yeah, so I don't think I was very vocal as a kid, but my mom and kind of noticed on some level some things that I was struggling with and the anxiety. So when I was about 7, she sent me to a neuropsych for an evaluation, and it showed symptoms of anxiety disorder and social anxiety. But despite this, it's a hard thing to kind of battle with. I continued to struggle, as I grew up through middle and high school. It became this kind of feeling of constant exhaustion. um, I would often come home from school and just kind of get into bed. School ended up being kind of what I describe as a pressure cooker. Everyone was really expected to maintain this high GPA, play lots of sports, and have a thriving social life, all while still somehow taking care of themselves. And I really remembered that classmates, a bad grade was really seen as a B or B minus. And this kind of manifested. I remember I had a lot of trouble with asking for help or clarification in class. I would say, I don't know the answer. I didn't really raise my hand in class much because I couldn't risk being wrong with the whole class, focus on me. But during my sophomore year of high school, I ended up approaching my mom about finding a doctor who could start me on medication to kind of help. I was seeing a therapist about once a week, but I did feel that I needed more, and I was starting to become more vocal with that. But when I first brought it up, my mom was kind of against the idea. She wanted to treat my symptoms naturally. These kind of medications can have that kind of stigma. But I'm super lucky. My mom has always accepted me and has loved me, unconditionally. And we kind of worked together to realize that this might be a part of what I need. And once we kind of moved into this phase of accepting my mental health conditions, I'd been diagnosed with generalized anxiety and depression. I began seeing a local psychiatrist and kind of beginning to find antidepressants that seemed to work well. Part of this included a genome test, which looks at, genetics and what types of medications work best based on genetic makeup. And, throughout this whole time, continuing to go to therapy, being really important for my personal recovery, helping me with things like self-expression, as an outlet for talking about feelings and problems and finding healthy ways to solve them. I remember coming to Maris a few years ago, my therapist really being a big help with finding, coping skills, things like breathing techniques. And I've always been kind of bad with picking at my fingers as like an anxiety type of manifestation. So she's been a real help finding, other ways to kind of combat that.
Wow. That sounds so challenging, and you seem to be doing so well right now. How were you able to get through it? It sounds like you had a lot of support systems, but what else helped?
Yeah, definitely. It was hard for a long time to kind of accept myself and and my mental health conditions. It's easy to look around, a room, and I would often, just be somewhere and see other people who seemed so happy, and I would wonder why I couldn't just be what I perceived as normal and happy like them. And taking medication, that, like I mentioned, that stigma, believing that I was some sort of crazy and being afraid of what people would think of me. And these assumptions and this stigma really delayed my acceptance and my recovery. But, I was really fortunate to have a great support system of not only my family, but my friends who were able to be really open about, their own struggles and journeys. Um, they were always able to be unapologetically themselves. And that really helped me, accept myself and eventually do the same. And with their support and that of my family, I really ended up being able to embrace the fact that mental health conditions are just medical illnesses, just like anything else. and they're not anyone's fault or something to be ashamed of.
I love that so much. With any challenge in life, it's up to us to find lessons learned or silver linings. Do you have any of those?
Yeah, I think I've had a lot of, kind of success stories throughout what seems to be kind of a dark story. Um, I've helped people, which has been really amazing. I had a friend in high school who was really struggling, um, and she was not as lucky as me, as I think a lot of people unfortunately find themselves to be. Her family was not as supportive of her struggles, and she was seeing a therapist, but her family was kind of unwilling to take any further steps than that. So really, helping her um, on her own more, or convincing her parents a little bit more to get that help. And she did. Eventually she was able to get there, and she's in college, um, like me, and successful. I was also, in high school, really fortunate um, to be able to kind of more or less on my own plan and organize an event with speaker Kevin Hines, who is a suicide attempt survivor. He was about 16 when he began experiencing symptoms, and was later diagnosed with bipolar disorder. He travels the world now sharing his story of hope and healing. And, I was really fortunate to be able to bring him to my community after about a year of planning, which was really incredible.
Thank you so much, Annabelle. Your story is really inspiring. Really appreciate you sharing your journey with us today, both the challenges, the successes, and the ways that you've been able to take all of that and bring it into something really positive for yourself and for everybody around you. Thank you.